3 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Rachel at Whole Foods. She was buying organic strawberries and humming to herself, looking exactly like the kind of woman who had her life together. The kind of woman my ex-husband deserved. The kind of woman I used to think I was. She didn't recognize me at first. Why would she? I was just another divorced 30-something in yoga pants buying wine at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. But I knew her. I'd stalked her Instagram enough times to memorize that smile, the one she wore in all those photos with Graham. "Your strawberries look perfect," I said, because apparently self-destruction is my specialty. She looked up, friendly but puzzled. "Thanks. They're having a great sale today." I should have walked away. Should have let her continue living her uncomplicated life with my uncomplicated ex-husband. Instead, I heard myself saying, "You're Rachel, right? Graham's girlfriend?" Her face lit up in that way that told me everything. She was in love, real love. The kind that doesn't need hotel rooms and secret phones and lies that taste like metal in your mouth. "Yes. Do we know each other?" "I'm Amy," I said, watching recognition dawn. "His ex-wife." To her credit, she didn't run, didn't make excuses, just stood there holding her strawberries like a shield while I held my wine like a confession. "Oh," she said softly. "Hi." We stood there in the produce section, two women connected by one man's broken trust, and I wanted to warn her, wanted to tell her that Graham wasn't as perfect as he seemed, that his need for control, his obsession with evidence and proof and being right would eventually suffocate her too. But looking at her glowing face, I realized the truth. Graham hadn't been the problem. I had. Let me go back to where it really started, not with Ethan, but with the slow death of a marriage I didn't know how to save. Graham was the kind of husband other women envied. Stable job, helped with housework, remembered anniversaries. He'd make these elaborate date nights, complete with printed itineraries and restaurant reservations made weeks in advance. Every Sunday, he'd bring me coffee in bed at exactly 8:15 a.m., prepared exactly how I liked it. Sounds perfect, right? That's what everyone said. "You're so lucky," my friends would sigh. "Graham's one of the good ones." But they didn't see what I saw. The way he'd catalog my preferences like data points. The way every gesture felt rehearsed, like he was following a manual titled How to Be a Good Husband, instead of actually feeling anything. I'd catch him sometimes, watching me with this calculating look, like he was measuring my happiness on some invisible scale. "What would make you happy?" he'd ask during our scheduled weekly check-ins. Yes, we had scheduled check-ins. Every Thursday at 8 p.m., like our marriage was a project requiring status updates. Spontaneity, I'd say. Surprise, something that isn't planned. He'd nod and make a note in his phone. Plan more surprises. He never understood the irony. My job in medical device sales meant traveling to conferences, meeting with hospital administrators, schmoozing potential clients. It was exhausting, but exhilarating. I was good at it, really good. Top performer 3 years running, but Graham treated my career like a hobby I'd eventually outgrow. "When you're ready to slow down, we can start trying for kids," he'd say, as if my ambition was just a phase before my real purpose, motherhood. The first time I met Ethan was at a conference in Phoenix. He was presenting on innovative surgical techniques, and I was there to showcase our latest laparoscopic equipment. He caught my eye during his presentation. Not because he was handsome, though he was, but because of his passion. The way his whole face lit up when he talked about saving lives, improving outcomes, making a difference. Graham never looked like that. Not about his job, not about our marriage, not about anything. "Impressive presentation," I told Ethan at the networking mixer. "Impressive equipment," he countered, nodding at our display booth. "That visualization system could revolutionize minimally invasive procedures." We talked for hours about medicine, technology, the future of healthcare. He listened to my ideas, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak or taking notes for later reference. When I suggested a modification to our imaging software, his eyes widened with genuine excitement. "That's brilliant," he said. "You should patent that." Graham would have said, "That's nice, honey," and changed the subject to our weekend plans. I didn't plan to have an affair. I went back to my hotel room that night and FaceTimed Graham like always. He was reorganizing the spice rack, telling me about his day in the same monotone he always used. I tried to share my excitement about the conference, about the connections I'd made, but he just nodded absently. "Sounds productive," he said. "Don't forget we have dinner with my parents Sunday when you get back." That night, I lay in my hotel bed and cried. Not dramatic, affair-justifying tears, just quiet, sad recognition that I was deeply, fundamentally lonely in my marriage. Ethan and I exchanged business cards, started emailing about professional things that slowly became personal. He was married too, unhappily, to a woman who'd given him an ultimatum, her or his career. He'd chosen career but stayed married out of obligation and guilt. "I know exactly what you mean," I wrote back when he described feeling like a stranger in his own home. "It's like playing a part in a play where everyone knows their lines except you." 3 months of emails. Then texts, then phone calls that lasted until 2 a.m., both of us whispering in our cars or locked bathrooms, talking about everything and nothing. The conferences we both attended became anticipated escapes from lives that felt increasingly fake. The first time we kissed was in San Diego. We'd had drinks after the day's sessions, talking about a particularly innovative procedure he'd developed. His passion was infectious, his eyes bright with possibility. When he walked me to my room, I meant to say goodnight. Instead, I kissed him. "We shouldn't," he said against my lips. "I know," I said, and kissed him again. That night changed everything. Not just because we slept together, though we did, but because for the first time in years, I felt alive, felt wanted, felt like more than a checklist item in someone's perfectly organized life. The guilt was immediate and crushing. I flew home the next day and threw myself at Graham, trying to rekindle something, anything, but he just patted my back and reminded me we had scheduled intimacy for Thursday. Scheduled intimacy. The affair continued because I was weak and selfish and desperate to feel something real. Every business trip became a chance to see Ethan. Every lie became easier than the last. Client dinner, extended meetings, team-building exercise. Graham never questioned it, never showed jealousy or concern. Part of me wanted him to care enough to be suspicious, to fight for me, to show some passion about losing me. Instead, he just updated his calendar and made dinner for one. I became reckless, saved photos I should have deleted, bought lingerie I'd never wear for my husband, started planning a future that existed only in hotel rooms and stolen moments. The Miami trip was supposed to be our chance to talk about really being together. Ethan was finally ready to leave his wife. I was finally ready to stop living this double life. We'd booked a resort, a real vacation, not just conference sex and room service. I was giddy with possibility when I came home from the business trip where we'd made these plans. So giddy, I didn't notice Graham watching me differently. Didn't catch the way his eyes tracked my movements, how he studied my phone, how his questions had subtle edges I was too euphoric to detect. When I found Ethan's note in my suitcase, a stupid, romantic gesture he'd slipped in without telling me, my blood went cold. Graham couldn't have seen it. He wouldn't go through my things. Would he? But the way he looked at me that night, I knew. Somehow he knew. I should have confessed then. Should have been honest. Instead, I doubled down on the lies, convinced I could still control the situation. I'd underestimated Graham. Underestimated his capacity for methodical destruction. When he hired the private investigator, when he gathered his evidence like a prosecutor building a case, he wasn't trying to save our marriage. He was building my funeral pyre. The confrontation was surgical. No screaming, no passion, just cold presentation of facts. Photos, timestamps, credit card records. He'd turned our marriage into a crime scene and appointed himself judge, jury, and executioner. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" he asked, giving me one last chance. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only watch as he laid out my betrayal like evidence tags. What hurt most wasn't his anger, it was his satisfaction, like he'd been waiting for this. Like finally having proof of my failure validated something he'd suspected all along, that I was never good enough for his perfectly ordered life. "Affairs don't just happen," he said, and he was right. But neither do marriages that feel like prison sentences. Neither do husbands who schedule spontaneity and wives who seek passion in hotel rooms. When Ethan's wife found out, because of course Graham made sure she did, everything imploded. Ethan chose his marriage, his reputation, his comfortable lie over me. Just like I'd chosen mine until it was ripped away. "This is getting too complicated," he texted. "I think we should cool things off." Cool things off. Like we were leftovers that needed refrigerating. The divorce was swift and brutal. Graham had documentation for everything. Every lie cataloged, every deception filed. He got the house, most of our assets, and the moral high ground he'd probably been standing on our entire marriage. I lost everything. My husband, my home, my reputation when Ethan's wife went scorched earth on social media. My career took a hit too. Turns out hospitals don't love sales reps who sleep with their surgeons. But the worst part? Watching Graham flourish without me. Not in a vindictive way, but genuinely. Like I'd been weights on his ankles, and now he could finally run. He started dating Rachel within 6 months. Started smiling in photos in a way I'd never seen. Started living instead of just organizing life into neat little boxes. Though maybe those boxes had been for me all along. Maybe his rigid structure was how he loved someone he couldn't quite figure out how to reach. Now I live in a studio apartment that smells like the Thai restaurant downstairs. I still work in medical sales, but for a smaller company, traveling to less impressive conferences. I don't date. Can't seem to trust myself enough to try. Sometimes I run into people who knew us as a couple. They always ask what happened with that perfect husband of mine. I tell them the truth. I had an affair. I destroyed my marriage. I hurt a good man who loved me the only way he knew how. What I don't tell them is that some nights I miss his scheduled surprises. Miss the coffee at exactly 8:15. Miss the predictability I once thought was killing me. Because it turns out chaos isn't freedom. It's just chaos. And Ethan and I don't talk. He saved his marriage by throwing me under the bus, painting me as the predator who seduced him. His wife posts passive-aggressive quotes about home wreckers on Facebook. I don't blame her. In her story, I'm the villain. In Graham's story, too. The thing is, they're not wrong. I stood in that Whole Foods, watching Rachel glow with the kind of happiness I'd thrown away, and I wanted to tell her Graham's flaws, how he'd schedule their sex life, how he'd turn their love into a project plan, how he'd document everything like evidence for a trial that might never come. Instead, I said, "He's a good man, the best. Take care of him." She smiled, relieved. "I will. He takes care of me, too. He's teaching me woodworking. We're building a table together. Building something together. Not analyzing it, not scheduling it, not documenting it. Just creating." Maybe Graham had learned something from our failure after all. Maybe he'd figured out how to love someone without turning them into data points. Maybe Rachel brought out something in him I never could. Or maybe I was so busy looking for passion in other places that I missed it right in front of me. All those scheduled dates, those perfect cups of coffee, those notes in my lunch. Maybe that was Graham's passion. Quiet, consistent, documented love. I bought my wine and left them to their strawberries and their uncomplicated love. Sitting in my car in the parking lot, I thought about texting Ethan. Just to see, just to know if he ever thinks about our hotel rooms and stolen moments. But I didn't. Because Graham was right about one thing. Affairs don't just happen, they're choices. 1,000 small betrayals that add up to one devastating truth. I chose excitement over stability, passion over partnership, secrets over truth. And now I live with those choices, in a studio apartment that smells like pad thai, scrolling through photos of my ex-husband building furniture with a woman who understands that sometimes love looks like scheduled date nights and coffee at 8:15. She's lucky. I hope she knows that. I hope she knows that some women have to lose everything to understand that boring is just another word for safe. That predictable means dependable. That a man who documents your life together is a man who's paying attention. I had all of that. Had a husband who knew exactly how I liked my coffee, who scheduled surprises because he wanted to make sure I was happy, who built our life like a careful architect, making sure every beam could hold the weight. And I burned it down for hotel rooms and a man who couldn't even choose me when it mattered. Graham's probably making Rachel coffee right now, exactly how she likes it, at exactly the right time. Building their life together one documented moment at a time. And somewhere in a house I've never seen, Ethan is still married to a woman he doesn't love, scheduling his next conference, looking for his next Amy. While I sit here alone, finally understanding that what I thought was a prison was actually a home, and I was the fire.